You're live on your election headquarters. It is our continuous coverage of election 2020. We've taken you through what has been happening so far. I'm Gifty-Ando Apia, and we'll be doing this together. I'll be doing this together with Benjamin Akakpo, who is joining us at the Joy 997 studios. Hello, Akakpo.
Well, hello, Gifty, and thank you for connecting. Of course, we're here in the Joy 997 studios, and it's our extensive coverage of election 2020. The hashtag still remains election HQ, and I'm going to be doing this together with a very special man. Very, very, very special. Raymond Akwa. Charlie.
A man of the masses.
A man of the masses. A man of all political seasons. You know, this is a seasoned man when it comes to covering elections. And now that you actually grace us with your presence, right before we connect back to Studio 70, what are your expectations? What have you anticipated ahead of election 2020?
So 2020 is a very special election. The biggest questions on the table are whether or not Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo is going to be a one-term president, or in the alternative, John Dramani Mahama would remain a one-term president. Those are very defining moments in the lives of the individuals, also for the political parties. You know, they're thinking around having 2 terms before you are removed since 1992 has been the case. Will the NPP be the first political party in this particular season, in the Fourth Republic, not to have gone 2 terms? Or will the NDC come back to actually offset the NPP's quest to complete the period? Beyond everything.
You know the interesting bit about what you say, would it also be a possibility that John Dramani Mahama, the flag bearer of the NDC, becomes the first, former president to retake the seat at the presidency? That's another interesting.
That's a very important one, because it's also another first. So there are a lot of firsts in this particular election, and there's a lot at stake. Luckily, in the build-up to the election, we've not seen a lot of the thinking around violence and the things that mostly highly contentious elections of this sort. So check 2000, check 2008. All of those periods had very, very serious moments. Maybe, and let's be clear, maybe after the votes start coming in, when we are getting to the end of the day, and it's becoming pretty obvious, or it looks like we may go for a second round, or an obvious win is not on the horizon anytime soon, that is where the tensions may rise. But so far, I see, a lot of issues around, a few of them anticipated. There are so many police stations across the country that if there are no problems, it will be a perfect election. Afarijan told me in 2008 that the years that he's been in the election, there's not like a perfect election. So we're seeing systems going the way they are supposed to go, with a few hitches here and there. Hopefully, we'll go in that trend. And if the EC is able to deliver within 24 hours, I'll be impressed. I'm very skeptical about that, but I'll be impressed.
Well, Raymond Akwa there, and he's a man of, elections, if I may call him that. Now, some of those incidents you spoke of, earlier in the day, some, incidents there, the police had to step in for Mena, Kwesi Minsim, Sunyane, among other areas. We're going to be bringing you all the scoop, but right now, let's take a bit of a recap of what exactly has been happening, as far as election 2020 is concerned since morning. Handing over back to you, Gifty-Ando Apia in Studio 70. Now, let's take...
Well, it's been an election with many unknowns and unprecedented situations as yet. 6 new regions to watch, the same constituencies. We're looking at over 33,000 polling stations. Interestingly, distinct presidential candidature, the longest in history with 12 of them, only slightly similar to what we had in 1979. We are looking at 2-time rivals who are battling it out, gunning for that 50+1 vote here. And that's what a candidate needs. We're looking at 8,513,081 plus 1. That's what a candidate needs if the over 17 million registered voters turn out to vote. It's been peaceful so far, but for, a few queue management issues in the Dodododo, a few others in the Wutu Senya West, ballot sheet errors, and a shooting incident in the Wutu Senya East, which we'll be dwelling on. There have also been checkered cases of late arrival of election material. We'll stay a while longer, like I said, on the Wutu Senya East constituency. We'll look at the voting trends in some of the constituencies and the regions, and we'll connect with my colleague Israeli, who will be stationed at the Electoral Commission's headquarters. You've had perspectives of my colleagues Evans and Winston on the voting trends. We'll bring you perspective of political scientist Dr. Alidu Seidu, is my guest right now here in the studio. Doc, you're welcome.
Thank you so much.
It's been a while. I remember 4 years ago having the same conversation. I mean, having you as my guest at the same time. It'll be interesting to have a conversation. How is it going for you so far?
I think so far so good. There's been a lot of calm, except just some few polling stations where there were late arrival of ballot materials, and then Ododo and Ewutu Senya. I think those are just, for now we call them isolated cases, but generally it's very peaceful.
Well, what are your expectations? I mean, we still have some time. I mean, at 5 o'clock, Evans Spencer and Winston will be taking over from me. But at that time, the polls will be closing. What do you expect from there? That there will still be a lot of people in the queues? And if that's what you're expecting, what does it tell you? That there will be a large voter turnout at the end of the day?
So judging by what we've had so far in the morning, I believe there is so much enthusiasm on the part of the Ghanaian voter to go and cast their vote. And if it's going to continue that way, I expect that we're going to have a very high voter turnout. And usually those high voter turnout demonstrates citizens' commitment to making a choice and to participating in electoral processes. So I believe from now on, usually from the morning 7 to like 12, you usually see a very busy polling stations, people turning out to vote at polling stations. Then it gets a little bit down from that time to 3, and then maybe from 4-ish to the point that they'll start counting. So I think this is one of the busiest peak periods in the voting calendar. So I believe it's going to continue that way. We are likely going to have one of the highest voter turnout record maybe in the country.
Now that's a very interesting point you make there, because there have been research work, or there have been some surveys that give us a certain trend in terms of the voter turnout. I mean, a certain trend that speaks to the voter turnout. Apparently, according to that research, the higher the voter turnout, usually what it means is that we're maintaining a government. When the voter turnout goes below 70%, usually there is a change in government. So it's an interesting part that we'll look at, I think, going along. But I mean, yesterday, my colleague Evans Spencer and Winston Amwal gave you some very interesting trends. We've looked generally at the performance of the political parties, focusing on the two main parties, the NDC and the MPP, of course, and we'll do a bit more of that as well. We've also looked at the performance of the parties in the strongholds, the parties in their strongholds, and then we've looked at their performance in the strongholds of their opposers. We've looked at the performance of parties in the swing areas, and we can go on to do a bit more of that because there are so many of them, 275. Now, the impact of the new regions on the performance is also a thing that we'll be looking at, and the presidential and parliamentary performance in terms of how they compare to one another and in this particular region, which still boils down to the 8 million magic number that Evans and Winston crunched for you yesterday. But Dr. Alidu Seidu, people have said that they're interesting regions to watch. And we can't belabor that point. The swing regions, the Greater Accra region, the Western region, the Bono Half region, the Central region. These are the regions to watch. But then they also make the point about the new regions and how we need to look out for those particular new regions and how they turn out. What is most interesting for you when it comes to the new regions that have been added?
So most of them used to be at least either part of a stronghold of a specific political party, or were part of, to some extent, the swing regions. So when you look at it that way, it depends on the permutation and the way those constituencies, new regions were carved out of the existing regions. So, for example, if you go to maybe the northern region, for example, traditionally the northern region has been voting for the NDC. Even though over the years the MPP has made a little bit of gains in that particular region.
And if I can just jump in there, one thing that I want us to do right now is to go back and look at what has happened so far, because with this regional analysis, I want to engage the smart wall and give you an idea, give our viewers as well the idea of the figures we're looking at and the trends and what they say, make it easier for them to connect with the analysis that you'll be doing. So let's just take you down a little bit down memory lane. I mean, what's been happening so far today. We'll start with the President Akufo-Addo, who has been voting today in his hometown, Chebi. We'll look up that particular constituency and see what analysis we can do there. Take a look at the president when he went to vote.
Exactly. So what is happening is that President Akufo-Addo is now going through the voting process. He's just finished washing his hands in compliance with the COVID-19 protocols. He's just checked his name, and now he's moving to a spot where he will be given the ballot paper. He's now going through the biometric verification process. He is putting one finger on it to confirm that he's a person whose name and details is captured on the electoral register. And when he's done, he will be given the ballot paper. That will be when he will now go to the ballot box, cast his vote, and then we will be done. Remember that the First Lady, Rebecca Akufo-Addo, is also voting in this constituency. As I speak, he is almost done. He's done with verifying his details per the biometric machine. He's now going to be given a ballot paper. The electoral officer is going to, he's shared one for him now. And what you are seeing on your shots, President Akufo-Addo about to be given a ballot paper. And then when he's given the ballot paper, the usual process will be that he will go through it, ensure that it is stamped at the back. That will make it legitimate. And then he will go to the ballot box and then begin the process of exercising his civic responsibility. So what you're seeing is that his ballot. He's going to put the paper in the ballot box, and that will be done. That will be done with the process of voting. He's just finished casting it. As you can see, he's dropping his ballot paper into the transparent ballot box, and that will conclude his exercise.
What I've seen here has been very encouraging. The process is very simple, very smooth, and I've been able to exercise my civic duty to participate in determining who will be our next member of parliament and who will be our next president. So I'm very happy with what I've seen.
That's President Akufo-Addo when he went out there to vote in Chebi, where he comes from. I need to do a very quick follow-up on something that happened in the Ewutu Senya East. Well, what we know from the police is that they have been chasing up an SUV allegedly containing something. That we also know that there was a gunshot there. We do have the police PRO for the area, Irene Opon, who is joining us to shed a bit more light on what actually happened and what more they have. Madam Irene Opon, thank you for your time. Good afternoon.
Hello.
Hi, I hear you. Do you hear me?
Hardly, but I can manage.
Let me raise my voice a little. Is this better?
Better.
Right. So let's refresh the memory of our viewers and our listeners, those who have not really followed the story. We understand that there was an SUV that the police was chasing. What actually happened? Please start from the beginning for us.
Thank you very much. We had an information from a security officer in a polling station closer to where the incident happened that gunmen in a black car have opened fire on 5 occupants in another private car, and 2 people are injured. So police patrol team rushed to the scene, but then we didn't meet the perpetrators. And as I'm speaking, all our snapchat areas, all patrol teams within Central Region have been alerted, and the perpetrators are being pursued.
So what it means is that as we speak, there is an SUV that you are looking to track down, but you haven't been able to do so.
Efforts are being made to arrest the gunmen, but then for now we have not made any arrests yet.
Okay, why? So they opened fire, allegedly opened fire on somebody. Those people who were victims of the gunshots, are they? Can you give us an update on how they are doing?
They have been, those who get wounded have been sent to the hospital. The divisional commander have followed up to the hospital, and we are waiting for a doctor to attend to them so that we can also take treatment for them. Investigations have started, and we want to assure the general public, especially around Kasua and Ewutu Senya East, that we are ready to provide the needed security. There is no cause for alarm. Everybody should go out and exercise their rights. That is important, because we have even called for reinforcement from the regional headquarters who are coming to beef up security in and around Kasua. And we know that nothing can take us by surprise.
We'll soon connect with our correspondent on the ground and find out whether this is having an impact on the voting behavior, or whether it's making people feel intimidated and therefore making it much more difficult for them to step out and actually vote. But these people who have voted, you said you have alerted your colleagues, to look out for them. Do you have any cause to suspect that it has anything to do with the election? Because what we're also getting is that this does not happen at a polling station.
The incident did not happen at the polling station.
Yes.
It happened some 300 meters away from the polling station.
What I want to be sure of is whether or not at this point you can say it has anything at all to do with the election or not.
Our security officers are still at post, and voting is going on.
All right. I guess I will have to come back to you. But I lost her there. I was just going to ask what happened with a particular case that we're still following, that we haven't had a lot of update on. The last time the IGP held a press conference, they told us that that case is part of a number of cases they are looking at, and it is about the Hawa Kumsin case, where there was a gunshot there as well. I wanted to find out what has happened on the back of that particular story, but it looks like I lost her. Certainly we'll be able to raise her back on the line. But you know that Benjamin Akakpo is standing by with Raymond Akwa. They are in the Joy 997 studios right now. And I'm wondering what their thoughts are on what Codeo has put together so far. The picture it paints is that it's gone well so far. We still have what? Let me see how many hours more to go. We still have barely 2.5 hours to go, but it's gone well so far. Save the Ewutu Senya East, Ewutu Senya West issues that have come up. Benjamin, I'm coming over to you. Let's hear your thoughts as well on how it's gone so far and the expectations going forward.
We're also still here in Studio 997. I'm here together with the man Raymond Akwa. And in fact, we've been discoursing on these developments. So far, Codeo giving us sort of a clean bill of health when it comes to the electoral process up to this point in time. But they're also pointing to the fact that there could be some, minute problems that ought to be dealt with. Starting from the fact that as they sent their observers around the country, in some spots, we didn't have the full complement of Electoral Commission officials. But like they quickly added, that was, earlier in the day at around 6 a.m. So they cannot vouch for how many were on the spot. But if you look at the statistics, the percentages that they give us, in some areas, about 18 plus percent 5 officials present. In other areas, only 4 officials present. What is your take on that? How do you think this could impact, the electoral process?
It depends. Early preparation mostly helps because if you get there early, you set up early, you try the system to see whether verification would happen and whether there any difficulty, whether you brought your batteries along and everything will be packed properly for you. So you know that you are not starting or having a false start. So going early and 6 a.m. is an appropriate time for you to be there. Yeah. And if you are there early enough, what you prevent is all the unnecessary problems with. And by 6 a.m., to be fair, the people that have gathered, they are ready to actually queue up and vote.
I mean, in most places, by 6 a.m., the people are there already. I mean, from the reports we got earlier in the morning, people started queuing from even midnight.
One of the responsibilities of the presiding officer, the presiding officer proper on the ground, one of his responsibilities is to make sure that as lead of the team, he will make sure every other person that wants to vote actually conduct themselves appropriately and is in the queue. If the police is ready, if security is ready, if every other person is ready, and the people who are supposed to do the elections are not there, it sends a bad signal. It also starts like you are not prepared for it. So that may be the only problem with that. Beyond that, if they are able to come in 10 minutes time and set up quickly and get to work, which I think will not be possible, and mostly it's been very doubtful because it requires some level of setup anyway. Yeah. All of this would have to happen for them to be, but there are also challenges. So now, they all meet at certain specific district offices or district allocated areas. In Legon, for example, you have to meet at the Legon police station, where you'll be told where to take up your ballot and all that. Cars would have to take you to your venue. Sometimes, and I recall in 2012, there were problems like that. In 2016, there were similar problems like that. The cars are not available to take you where you're supposed to go, and then you are challenged in finding alternative transportation. Right. The team together, sometimes team members, even the night before, may not know where they are posted. So you might think that you are in Gimpa, a police station in Gimpa, but you may be somewhere in Westlands or something like that, and there's a change that's already happened on the ground.
I guess for me, the question then to pose is, over the years, what lessons have we learned from all of these challenges? Because if we are not progressively learning from the challenges we're facing, we'll keep facing these problems.
I get your point. It's important that some of these things are easily dealt with. If you probably have people chosen early enough, trained properly, you have the mechanisms in place, the logistics in place, the ECR's budget approved and all of that. Some of these things are expected. But I also think that these are not really the bigger problems because it's just a small section. Now, I'm not discounting it. When 80% of the country is up and running and functioning at all areas, a few incidents would happen. We can learn from that and maybe move beyond that. Except, and I heard what happened in Wager, except it affects voting significantly. I heard people complain that 2 hours into the voting time, some officials had not arrived with even ballot materials. Right. That is problematic. That sends 2 signals.
I mean, when you hear of incidents where the ink is not even available for you to make the necessary markings, then it creates the impression that it's going to hamper the electoral process.
It's true, and you are going to get people needlessly agitated, especially when those places are close to flashpoints. You do not want to create conditions where people would suspect or think that you intend doing something untoward with the process. That is the more reason why they would react to it. So some of these things are clearly avoidable. And I'm hoping we get to the point where some of these small things will not be a problem for us again. Maybe when we expand to the level where, I mean, now online voting has become a problem, but when we expand to the level where alternative voting systems are in place, the pressure of having to go mount at a polling station, having to go do the things that we've been doing over the period would lessen. But of course, that's not the only problem on the ground anyway. But if you put it together, let's look at it this way. Codeo is saying that, I mean, they were not everywhere. Codeo was not everywhere. The percentage of the places that they've been to, they are convinced that about 70% of what is expected on the ground is done. That is good. That's a step in the right direction. In 2012, by this time, we're having massive challenges. We're having serious difficulties with verification machines across the country, not in limited or isolated incidents. In 2012, by this time, there were so many places that machines were breaking down and were heading towards a possible second-day vote. And it did happen at the end of the day.
It did.
So it means that we learned a lot. Unfortunately, the element of machine breakdowns and also freezing and all of the other problems that we are hearing in small bits all over the place did not happen in 2016. And if people have forgotten that, from the 2012 experience, 2016 was a way better election, which solved or perhaps presented a situation where we had forgotten about some of the problems we had in 2012. If there are any indications of those problems recurring, it is problematic. It only shows we've not gone so far. We've not improved the way we said we wanted to improve. We've not done the things that we hoped we could do and head in the right direction. Then again, I add, it looks like these are isolated, less likely to be repeated, and single incidents across the country.
Right.
Now, when you put it together, it may create a bigger picture for the people to see.
I mean, on the back of that election petition, of course, we would have had to learn some lessons. And we saw some of them, in 2016, some advancements made, like you've rightly pointed out. So if we retrogress at this point, it would only mean that we move one step forward and two steps backwards. But let's look at some other, major matters to consider. Ballot papers. And I was just sharing with you that I voted only today before coming here. And I didn't bother to check about the serial, check on the serial number and all of that. I just ensured that it had been stamped, both of them, for both presidential and, parliamentary. And then I voted and, left the place. But here we are now with, I showed you images of some ballot sheets which supposedly have been padded. Now we have so many concerns there, and the Electoral Commission has even come out to respond to some of these claims and even, set aside some of its officials. How critical is that? It may not be on a large scale where we can say that, we can even question the election, but it's still early days yet. What could be the impact of this?
First, I'm wondering, and let's not pretend, the EC sometimes fails to train the people properly. Some of the people who are chosen to work for the EC are chosen because they are friends or relatives or known to people who are district officers or deputy district officers or everybody working down the line. It happens all the time. So training might be a problem. Secondly, and people suspect mischief. You see, when an election with high stakes like this are happening, you don't leave things like this to chance. If you tear off a ballot paper in a way that the serial number is off, and I heard the EC official talk about people should be concerned, should be interested in. I do not think that any ordinary person go to the police station to check serial numbers. My grandmother would not check it, and so many people will not check it. It behoves on the EC and its officials to do what is right. Not to leave it to people to insist and check on them.
Ray, it doesn't also take away the fact that you, the voter, in securing your vote, protecting the ballot, you should also be alert.
Yes, but I say that
onus also lies on you.
I agree perfectly. I can agree if you're saying that I should check whether it's stamped. I can agree if you're saying that I should check whether every candidate I know is on the ballot. Right. But to ask me to look out for serial numbers, which, even if it's the wrong serial number, how would I know? How would an ordinary person be able to determine that these are the actual serial numbers of this constituency? And it is the actual serial number to be used for this ballot paper. So after the talk about serial numbers, I really think it's asking too much of the people. Back to the main point. There should be something fundamentally wrong with an EC official, a ballot issuer, who would not know that there's a candidate I've torn off the ballot. There should be something fundamentally wrong with the system to churn out a human being like that. Because it beats my imagination that, and see, in this election, and I'm not saying that's how people are going to vote, which we know it will happen anyway. The first two candidates are perhaps the most important candidates on the ballot. It is, again, unreasonable to me to expect that the first two candidates, one of them will be missing on the ballot. It doesn't make sense to me. So, obviously, if it happens, and there are people who cannot see that, let me tell you why that will happen. If you are so engineered into going to vote for the first person or the second person, you may not care how the person is positioned or whether the person appears on it. You go and just thumbprint. That is why sometimes...
That's where the danger lies.
Very good. That's why sometimes those who are placed in between the NPP and the NDC, if NPP is number 1 and NDC is number 3, end up getting votes that they don't deserve. Yeah. Because people mistakenly take them for other political parties they thought they were supposed to vote for. So it is perfectly possible in a country like ours to have a situation like this happening. What we can do, and I'm also impressed with the response of the EC. One, we have interdicted the people, I don't know on which basis though, just because they made a mistake. You have to establish some form of intention to do some of these wrongs before you can really think that they have done something extraordinarily wrong. And it's also unfair to me, the ballot issuer, if I was issued, let's say, 6,000 or 500 ballots, and there's 1, 2, or 3 with such a defect or difficulty, to conclude that I did my job in a very poor state. But the vote is sunk. It is very important. The individual who is supposed to cast his vote should not be burdened with having to do a lot of checks in this process. What we should be able to check, and that is why two people matter, not the EC officials alone, but party agents and representatives. They are there also for the extra eye to look out not only for their interest, but for the interest of the voter too, because they lose a vote or win a vote in the process. So they are there for that purpose too. So maybe when they also come in and help out, all of these issues will be resolved. We want to see if they think the people have done a lot of wrong, proper investigation, and proceeding to prosecute them if there's a need for it. We don't want them putting this on the carpet like they do sometimes with some of these issues. They only matter during elections. See how we treat them. Yeah. We only matter during elections. After elections, we forget about them. Because after elections, the person's conduct may have inured to Party A or Party B's benefit. And if Party A end up being in power, the interest in getting these people prosecuted, it doesn't make sense. I don't know if you're getting my point.
I am.
So that is one point that we should not allow to lie at all. Again, how many of these incidents have we not uncovered so far? Have you thought about it? So there are police stations in very remote areas in the country.
These are the ones that we don't even know of.
Very good.
And what could be going on the blind side of all of us?
Let's not discount 4 votes at a polling station. 4 times 30,000 is almost what? 120,000 votes. In that year, when John Mills and the current president contested, the difference was almost 40,000.
Just about 41,000.
Brilliant. That should tell you that 40,000 in an election matters in this country, where first past the post is an important one, where for parliamentary I'm talking about, where we also need 50 plus 1. That single one vote could be the one that is erroneously characterized as a spot ballot that the person may not have ever gotten the opportunity to now convert into a fresh vote and not made a rejected ballot. So if the spot ballot ended up in the box, when they are counting and they pull it out, they'll reject that particular ballot. The person did not get a chance to make a choice again. That choice is rejected for good. The person's vote is wasted by no fault of theirs. This is not what we should be encouraging in this case. And that's where maybe the vigilance is required of the people who are going to vote. But aside this, the indication is that, well, I mean, it's on the right path. And one other thing we should be told, just let us know who is involved in this. I don't know if it's for their security that we are protecting them, but it's in the interest of the entire state that people get to know that we are not just making up stories about incidents happening. We know the constituency. We know the police station. They were recruited, and some of them were even made to sign confidential statements. No, not confidential. Declarations that they will do what is right within the laws and all of that. I remember there was a conversation about having to bring up our laws to the point where police station officials will bear responsibility for their conduct. If that is what we have in the current system, we should see those people coming up with the steps that they are supposed to be doing as we have it today. Maybe if they clear these things, people will not suspect mischief. People will not suspect deliberate malice or intentions directed at taking off some other person's vote. Now imagine, I mean, it matters a lot in the constituency, and it's not presidential, it's parliamentary.
Let's quickly do this now. And when we return, there were quite a number of matters that I'd have us delve into, including even the regional reorganization, the new setup when it comes to the country. I mean, all of these additional regions, what their impact is going to be. And then we're going to look at the facts and figures, the numbers, for example, and the top-ups. You look at the Greater Accra region and what, about 500,000 more votes added on. You look at the Ashanti region and you look at about, 200,000 votes added on. What are the dynamics going to be? Who is going to benefit? What are the projections? We're handing over back to, that is the JoyNews studio, and Gifty-Addo Appiah is here. Don't you forget, the hashtag is ElectionHQ. We're live on JoyNews and Joy Prime as well. When we return, more action from here.
And certainly, this is where you want to be.